Welcome to this combat mission tutorial video. This is number 4 in the series, and today we're going to have a look at map making. Now, I'm not going to cover missions and campaigns. I'm only going to show you how to create maps and work your way around the different controls and elevation. So, the scenario editor, and this is obviously where you create scenarios, campaigns, and the map making. Now, for filtering purposes, you want to determine what the type of map and size is, etc. We'll just give it a quick name. Now, you've got the normal exit, new, save, and load. Now, just show you load as quickly off to one side. It gives you the folders within your installation. If you click on Quick Battle Maps, you can see you've got all the maps you can load in if you want and modify them as is your desire. But it's advisable that if you did load one of these in and modify it, save it under a different name, either just adding a Z to the front or the end or something, just to distinguish it. Okay, so to make our maps, you can see that we've got under the mission, there are actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different options. Mission is creating the scenarios. Map is to create our map. Units, if we're creating a scenario, choose the units we're going to use. AI, so you can give battle plans to the AI. 3D preview, which is to look at the map in a 3D view to see what you've done so far. Make campaign is to string together scenarios that you've built. So we want map, and I don't know whether you can make it out, but there's a slight overlay here, but we're not going to cover this just yet. We're going to look at that later on in the video. I want to cover at first the different controls, what to do. Now, over here on the right hand side, you default to a 320 meter by 320 meter map. You can increase the size with these plus buttons or decrease the size with the minus buttons. Now, you might say, well, why do you have so many pluses and minuses? Why not just have one plus and one minus and just make it bigger or smaller? Well, if you did start creating your map and suddenly realized that one side of the map was unbalanced in terms of the setup zones, you can use these buttons to create the size just on one side or the other. So let's just bring it up to 400 meters. So that gives you a certain level of versatility. The fact that you've only got this level of map size making makes it a little bit fiddly. The largest map size you can have is 4 kilometers by 4 kilometers, but the plus sign buttons, the individual plus sign buttons, will only take you up to 2 kilometers. So you'd have to use both plus signs to get the full 4 kilometers. These set of buttons is your zoom, so we can zoom totally out or get closer, closer, and closer. Over here we've got a sort of paintbrush. Now, if we go onto weeds here, and we've got the smallest one, you can see it does just an individual square. Go the next size up, you can see it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Let's just go back to single grass size. Okay, now you've got all the different types of ground here. You've got 4 sets of menus for ground, and just to tell you that there are certain ground types where vehicles can't cross, and there are certain ground types that vehicles and troops can't cross. Excuse me. One example of this is heavy forest. Now, light forest and heavy forest give you the ground markers. Let's just go up one. For wooded areas, so it's not sort of very much grass or anything. Heavy forest, let's go down one, means we can set up little areas here that vehicles can't go through, but troops can. Why would you want to do that? Well, maybe you've got a wooded area here, and you want to have a road going through it, but you don't want vehicles to actually go off the road through the woods. Okay, so let's just get rid of that. Now, the same principle applies with water. You can paint water on here, and nothing can cross that. But if you did a shallow ford, vehicles can cross that and troops. If you did a deep ford, then only troops can cross it, vehicles can't. Just get rid of this. Okay, number 3, again you've got more crops and you've got grapes, because this is Fortress Italy. Brush. Foliage is where you've got the trees. Now, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different types of trees and 3 different types of bushes. Now, if we click on a tree, you can actually see we've got a sub-menu down here. And we can do individual trees. Now again, this is down to the paintbrushing, so I could actually have I won't show you just yet, but an individual tree in an individual square. Let's just, or we can do 2 or triple up. Now what you have down here, you might not be able to make it out, but there's a single tree and a grid, and you can use this to create an orchard type effect. Whereas what we'll do this one, which should be more randomly placed. So if we click on this button here and we go to 3D preview, now it might not be too clear from this point of view, but if we use Alt-T and then again, you can see that we've got quite a nice uniform spacing for our orchard area here, but our single tree area here that we'd created, you can see they're spread out all over the place, so it's quite random. And you can see down here we have the doubles and then the thicker trees, the 3 trees. Okay, let's come out of this. Now if you wanted to, you could paint in a larger area, but just by changing the size of the brush. Now to get rid of the trees, you just right click and it's all gone. Whoops. Okay, and the same applies for bushes as well. You've got roads and railroads. If we click on one of these, again we get a sub-menu, and you can see here we've got a straight line, we've got curves, we've got road forks, etc. So you can do a straight line, but obviously at the top you might want to turn right, as you can see here. Now it's these buttons up here that you would then use to get a different direction of the roads, and there you go. Sometimes to get a clean looking change of direction you might need to use more than one of these types of forks. To remove, you just right click, and yes, it is a little bit fiddly, but it's map making. Walls and fences, modular buildings and independent buildings. Now, independent buildings are, as they say, as it implies, detached buildings. Now, if we click on houses, again you can see you've got sub-menu, and again the little yellow arrow is the direction of where the entrance to the house is, and if you can use these buttons up the top here, it can change that. Now, place individual houses like so. Let's just zoom in slightly, and that's fine. You could, if you wanted to, put them next to each other, but for independent houses it's not advisable, because they could have more than one door, and you could end up with troops being able to freely move between the houses. There is no automatic blocking that wall between two independent buildings. To stop troops moving between houses, you need to use the modular buildings. And again, it's the same principle, and this time you can move them next to each other. You can have a little alley, and because these are modular, they do not have connecting doorways, so troops cannot move between the buildings. They have to get out and move into the next building. That's something to remember. Just right click to get rid of them. Now, you have, if you want to get rid of, say, a house, you have to be on the house menu. If I was on the foliage menu, I cannot get rid of it. I have to be on the building menu. Next we've got various flavour objects, telegraph poles, rocks, rubbish, etc. Craters, elevation, which we're going to touch on in a second. Landmarks. Now, you probably notice that sometimes when you're looking at a map, there might be a particular building or place and it's got a name above it. Well, you just click on where you want to create the landmark. Just call it test flag. See a little red dots appeared, and if we go into 3D preview, you can see that over here where we clicked, there's our little flag. Press escape to come out, and just right click to get rid of it. Setup zones. Now, you'll need this for any map you make, because if you don't have a setup zone, it won't have anywhere to put the troops. And you've got free allied and free axis. We'll do that in a second. Finally, we've got bridges, and again the direction of the bridge is dictated by these little sub-menus. So, setup zones. So we need two of those, and let's paint on a larger size. Let's just get rid of that. And axis. Oops. I don't have a steady mouse hand, I must admit. Okay, so now we've set up two axis, an axis setup zone and an allied setup zone. Now, the next thing you really need to understand is elevation. And on here we can actually create our hills, our different elevations for ridges, etc., etc. And it's quite important to understand how this works. Okay, now as you can see, our setup zones disappeared, and the way, well, let's actually go through this. There's a button here called Direct, and if you can see, it's got Direct 20. Now, if we wanted to create a string, say a ridge in the middle, now let's create a hill in the middle. Say that's 30 meters high. We use the plus button, and as you can see, the direct number here is going up. Now, whatever place we touch, we press left click on, will change to that number. And if we left, and this is what I call a contour marker. I don't know what the official word name for it is, but as you can see, we've clicked it one place, and everywhere is now at 30, which isn't necessarily what we want. But what I'm doing is I'm going to create a hill. Everything is 30. And it's not what we want. We certainly want the setup zones to be lower. So what we can now do is if we hit the minus key, bring that back down to 20, and going from about, say, here, doesn't matter that it's immediately across, it's doing its little calculation. Now everything south of this line is now 20, but you can see there's a gradual rise up to 30, and then everything north of here is 30. So again, we want to do another 20, and you can see everything down here is 20, apart from just here. We can improve that. Now the reason why it's gone blank is because it's recalculating. Now if we go into the 3D map, we can see rise up to the peak here, and then it goes down. So we've got a little hill. Let's come out of this. Now that's rather nice that we've got this. It's not too bad, but it could be that we want to say have the top of the hill as sandy or rocky. Now if we go back to the ground, you can see all the elevation numbers have disappeared. Now we can bring those back on these ground etc menus just by pressing the E key. But obviously sometimes when you want to place things, you don't want to see the elevation markers, so you just press E to bring off. Anyway, so we want to make it rocky right at the top. So if we hit rocky button and we just go along crudely around on the 30 mark, and go to 3D preview, and you can see now the top is rocky. Now you might turn around and say, well, that hill's too small, I want it higher. That's simple enough to do. So if we go back to elevation, and what we can do is you've got a number of choices. You've got a sort of rather nice gentle slope here, but what we could do if we wanted to is make this side steeper. So we've got the direct and it's set to 20. So we could go if we go into the 3D map now. And you can see that is a steeper rise on that side. But as we said, we want to make that higher. So if we do the plus, and we're going to make it 35. So just you play around with what you want. So and we'll do the inner part. 35. Go to 3D preview. And you can see that's now a lot higher. Now if I wanted to bring these other ones up, I'd have to press on them individually. Now that's the way to do it. There is the adjust button, which allows you to incrementally raise individual positions. You can see here it's set to 5, and you just use the plus and minus keys to increase. And the way this works is, rather than as with direct, which means every single time I press a button it will change that height to whatever I've designated, which is 35. So I could change that one to 35 regardless of what it is originally. Adjust means any button I press on here I can increase by this number. So I've got this set to 5, so I could increase, say, this middle one by 5. It goes up to 40, and again 45, and again 50. Now to change that I've got two choices. I can just get rid of it totally, the black marker, the contour marker, by just right clicking and it goes. Or what I can do now, hold the shift key down and right click. You can see, go, sorry, my fault. Hold the shift key down and press left mouse button and it goes down in increments of 5. So the direct one, you are dictating the actual number that the tile will be, the elevation the tile will be. That is the actual number it will be. The adjust means that you are increasing or decreasing by the delta number. Adjust all. Now, adjust all is slightly different. You have the plus and minus keys. All your maps will start at elevation 20, and you could reduce them down to 1 if you wanted to, but if you want rivers it's recommended that you have a minimum of 5. But if you did lower everything down, it could be that you are in a situation where you suddenly realise you want a gully somewhere and you want to go down a further 10, and you can't because you've got everything set at 5. Adjust all means that you can press the plus key and everything will raise by 1. Not only the black contour markers, but everywhere. And you can keep going up. Just bring them back down, and you can go lower if you want to. Bring back to the normal level. So those are the 3 commands, and they're the ones that you've really got to understand fully what you're doing and how it works. So let's just go into the 3D preview again. And you can see we've ended up, one of the problems is these little unrealistic looking peaks. And that's quite easy to get rid of. If we look down at the map here, we can see this is that little peak. Just zoom in, because that's a 35. You've got a 32 and a 31 because we've got rather a steep slope up here, and you've got 32, 33, 34 around. Now, to adjust that down, got two things we can do. We could either right click and get rid of it, but say we don't want to do that, because we don't want then a gradual slope coming out here and maybe causing a problem again with a pointed peak here. We go to adjust and change the delta with the minus key down to 1. We then hold the shift key down and left mouse click. That now goes down to 34, which is more in keeping with this one here. So if we now go onto the 3D preview, it's not so prominent and it looks a lot better. You can bring that down a little bit further if you wanted to. But that's basically it. That's really all you need to know about elevation. And the key thing is to just have a go, give it a go. Okay, so let's move on to map overlays. Now, what you need to do, you need obviously to create your overlay file, your map that you want to copy. Now, what I did for this purpose is go into Google Earth and create a 700 meter by 700 meter map. Now, this has to be saved as a BMP file, and the file name has to be special space editor space overlay space map. Now, you have to put this in a specific folder in your combat mission installation directory. And so if you go into your installation directory, you should see a folder called data. And within data, if you haven't done already, you need to create a folder called Z, just the single letter Z, and that's where you need to place your overlay file. Now, when you first start off, you obviously got 320 meter by 320 meter file, and the map is compressed to that size. Now, you probably can't see it very well, but to increase the opacity, you use the O key. So that's a nice level, I think, for me. Now, as you increase your combat mission map size, so as you can see, the overlay file is stretched with it. As you can see, it's stretching further and further. And now we bring it across and it'll look a little bit better. And it's as simple as that to get your map to be used. There you go, 700 meters by 700 meters. Now you can start painting onto the map, as I like to say. As you can see, you've got a bit of a wooded area going all the way across here, so we'll hit the light forest button. We'll do it a little bit deeper like that. And I mean, I don't worry too much about going over. You can always clean it up better yourself. But as you can see, we're just following the general line. Got one here. Okay, and it's as simple as that. Now you do have an additional tool which is a little bit crude. It doesn't really work that well, or at least I haven't found it working all that well. It's to do with roads and railroads, where you can, if you click on a road type, say let's do a paved road, you then get this extra button suddenly popping up saying you can use me, and this is just a connection between 2 points. So if I press here, it then says at the bottom, click map to set endpoint of automatic terrain connection. I just click here and zoom in slightly, and it's created a road. Now probably can't see that very well, so let's change it to gravel. I think it'd be darker. Click on the point again, click over here, and you can see it's not perfect. It tries its best again, but to give you an initial sort of crude layout for the road that you could then go back to and clean up to more of what you want, it's not bad. It's not a great tool, but it works. And just to get a rough sketch down of what you want is quite good. And that's really it. That's the using the overlay. If you then want to get rid of that overlay, you've got to come out of the game, rename that file, and then go back into the game and it will be gone. If you want to use a different one, then you've got to use this special editor overlay map name. There's no menu where you can just pick an overlay from like you can on the maps. It's a shame they've not taken it that far, but then they're a very small development team, and we can only hope in the future that they will do something like that. Anyway, that's end of tutorial 4, doing maps. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks very much for watching.